Hey everyone, it's Byron. I'm here again to testify for Jesus Christ in a time like we're in Decatur, Alabama, and is coming to the rest of the United States. It's imperative that we understand what the truth is, because if we don't know the truth, then we can be carried away with any old lie that comes along. So I have spent quite a bit of time reading the Bible and coming to the truth. And the one thing that I've noticed that's amazingly a huge contrast between how people think in society today and how the Bible reads is in your like how you interact with police officers. Um, in the Bible, there's a scripture, and I'm going to read them. I'm going to read let me see what verses it is. Romans 13, 1 through 5. When I get there to read those, you're going to see how the Bible encourages people to have respect for the powers or authorities over them. So as you can say that the mayor of Decatur, Alabama is the highest authority in Decatur. Under him, there are different other types of authority, one which is the police force. And inside the police force, there are police officers. Currently, there are people in Decatur who are blaming a police officer for a young man speeding away from the police officer. And in the course of speeding and resisting, I guess you could say resisting a stop, he sped and wrecked and killed himself. There's a lot of people that think the police officer caused the wreck. But as I go through this, you will understand my thought process and the Bible's thought process. Because if you have respect for police and you stop when the police are attempting to stop you, there's never a discussion about, well, why is he dead? And the bottom line is he's dead because he didn't take his foot off the accelerator and put it on the brake and stop for the police. That's the bottom line. There are even people that think the police should not enforce laws against people so that the people that are in error or not or living by the law won't be harmed, so that they can continue to break laws and impact other people. It's crazy how this world is. And ultimately, we're going to what's called, I would say, lawlessness. The Bible talks about the Antichrist. The Antichrist has to, in some translation, they call him the lawless one. There has to be a state of lack of respect for authority, lack of respect for the Bible, etc., for the Antichrist to be revealed. And you can find that in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. Anyway, just before I go into this scripture here, I want to talk about a dream the Lord gave me back in 2018. I shared it on YouTube, and it's called Malcolm X Issues a Warning. If you were to go to my YouTube channel, Juniper Tree and Beyond on YouTube, do a search for just Malcolm, Malcolm. When you get there, you'll see the video. The video will tell you the details. But anyway, in the dream, I was behind Malcolm X. And I knew, and I hadn't listened to the dream in a while, but I just knew Malcolm X was going to come back to life and deal with us. Now, I'm not talking about Malcolm X in the physical. I'm talking about his mentality. Malcolm X believed in that time he called black people Negro. He believed they needed their own society, their own little communities to live self-sufficient. And he also talked about every time a white man takes a black man to court over police brutality, the white man starts it, but it blames the black man. And there's a lot of people who are influenced by Malcolm X mentality that are alive today and in positions to have influence. So as you see things that are being played out and thought process and all that stuff, you can just imagine that within the homes of some of the people that have that mentality, within their homes when they were a small child, they were being indoctrinated with Malcolm X mentality. They have a choice to blend into society and enter in, and they have a choice to try to group up and stay together and be a community within themselves. But what has happened in a lot of cases is to stay together and be a community within themselves, they also have to live with the lower performers, and the lower performers have a lot of issues. They have a lot of violence. They have a lot of negative thinking. I have friends that grew up here in Decatur, Alabama, that moved away. And they talk about the difficulty level of coming home because of this, specifically what I'm talking about. When I was in middle school, um, there were people, when we integrated in middle school in the 6th grade, there were people, I had never seen this before in my life. There were people that felt like it was their duty on a daily basis to have a fight because they grew up in that type mentality. So when you grow up in that type mentality, even though you become an adult and have all the freedoms that have, better freedoms than anyone else has had in history of mankind, that stuff still grips you. So you still think about it in that respect. So you think if a young man is speeding away from a police officer to avoid being stopped, it's the police officer's fault. You think that if a man shoots at a police officer and the police officer returns fire and hits him, it's the police officer's fault. This type mentality just continues on and on and on, and that we are being plagued by it now. And unfortunately, this is not going to go away, and it may be periods of time where it's better, but it's going to continue on. But anyway, I wanted to talk about how to have a good relationship with the police officer. I use those examples to make the story more real because that's what's happening in Decatur, Alabama right now. But in Romans chapter 13, starting at verse 1, I'm going to read the scripture. This is King James. It's archaic for some people these days. I use it all the time. When we get to a word that's questionable, I'm going to try to explain what it's talking about. Anyway, in verse 1, it says, let every soul, that's every person, be subject to the higher powers, the authorities that are over them. You got, say example, you live in a city, you got the mayor. You may even have a councilman, but you have a mayor, you have a police chief, you got police officers. It's just built like that. Police officers working for the police chief working for the mayor. The higher powers, it goes all the way up to the presidential office. So it says, the powers that be are ordained of God. So all of this authority is ordained of God. And then we're going to get into the ordained part, what it means right here in this verse. In verse 2, it says, whosoever therefore resisteth the power, resisteth the ordinance, or the ordained portion. That's the arrangement or institution of God. So you can see just right here real quickly, if a person is resisting, like if I'm speeding and a police officer tries to stop me for speeding, and I press on, turn my blinker on, pull over to the side of the road, stop, I'm not resisting the higher power. However, if I do decide to speed, I am. So here we go. I'm going to start back at the beginning and skip the explanation of the arrangement. Whosoever therefore resisteth the power, resisteth the ordinance of God. And they that resist shall receive to themselves damnation. That's ruin. For rulers, that's the powers that are above us, for rulers are not a terror to good works. If you go out and you do good, they're not going to frighten you. They're going to be okay. But they're a terror to people that do evil. And the two things that I just mentioned are considered, quote unquote, evil. The scripture, the Bible even states, evil men shall wax worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived. So the Bible calls people who are deceiving other people and being deceived, calls them evil. Anyway, let's go on. Wilt thou then not be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, and that shall have praise of the same. I'm telling you something. If you get stopped by the police and everything that you got going on in your life is straight, that police officer has absolutely nothing to talk about, to be a problem with. Here's my license. Here's my registration. What were you doing? I was driving down the road to go to my mother's house. Okay. Did you realize you were speeding? No, sir, I didn't. How fast was I going? You were going 35. Man, I'm sorry. Sorry, officer. I just didn't realize it. Okay, well, this time I'm going to let you go, or I'm going to give you just a warning. It doesn't have to turn into a confrontation to where you start fighting. It's very easy. I got stopped less than 3 months ago. It was because I didn't use my blinker on the lane change. I knew the convenience of me not using my blinker offered the officer an opportunity to stop me. And I was totally cooperative. He understood I was cooperative. And he was a black man. I was a white man. There was no racism involved. It was just, look, dude, I'm trying to keep the neighborhood straight. And I was like, I understand, bro. He didn't say that. I thought that in my mind. So let me go back and make sure I covered it all. For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to evil. Without then not be afraid of the power. Do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise of the same. So if you do good, they're going to praise you for it. For he is a minister of God to thee for good. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid. For he beareth not the sword. In today's world, the sword is a pistol, a gun, or a baton, or whatever type of instrument they use to maintain control. Maybe it's even a taser. In vain. He doesn't have those things in vain. For he is the minister of God, a revenger to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil. Wherefore you must needs be subject, not only for wrath, but also for conscience sake. And I'm going to tell you something, this conscience sake is huge. This conscience sake is huge. There's a guy, he's the president of the NAACP here in Decatur, Alabama. I went to school with him. Rodney Gordon is his name. After school, I went off into the Army, was gone for some time. I came back to Decatur, was riding down Old Moulton Road in Decatur, near where Jack's used to be, which is over, the places have changed so many times. It's over there on Old Moulton Road. Anyway, I was riding by there, and I saw him standing in the parking lot. I just pulled over to the side of the road, got out. Hey, Rodney. Dude, he looked frightened to death. He was like, here's a white dude coming to talk to him. He must think I'm the authority. I'm not the authority. I'm the guy that went to high school with you. And by the way, I didn't even understand what was going on until I called somebody that graduated with it and said, oh, yeah, Rodney's selling drugs. Rodney was afraid because he had a guilty conscience. He had a guilty conscience. He had that guilty conscience so bad that years later, when Rodney got saved, Rodney had a man tell me, and I worked in a whole different place, send word to me that he had been saved. Unfortunately, Rodney hasn't matured totally in the scripture yet to where he understands these things, because he would be telling as a minister to the people of Decatur, Alabama, as the NAACP president. Rodney Gordon would be saying, look here, man, don't resist these people. Instead, he's saying, let's fight the power. Let's get rid of the officers who try to enforce the law. Now, I'm not saying the officer that shot Steve Perkins is innocent. I'm saying there hasn't been an investigation, and my preliminary belief is that he fired in self-defense. So anyway, the whole point here is there are a lot of people walking around with a guilty conscience because they've done something. Their conscience is not clear because they've been doing things wrong. As soon as they see a police officer, they look for the brake pedal so they can slow down. As soon as I'm telling you, you can be on a 70-mile-per-hour speed limit road here. Suddenly you're in the traffic just stops. It's because there's a police officer that has somebody pulled over on the side of the road, and he's not interfering with the traffic at all. But people slow down because their conscience is bothering them. My wife even says to me, "Ooh, cop, slow down." And I'm like, I'm doing the speed limit. Why I got to slow down? So don't walk this earth with a guilty conscience and then use your guilty conscience to tell other people you got to be afraid of cops. They're not a terror to peace-loving, citizens that go along and do right. They're a terror to those people who are doing wrong. And if there's a mistake, I'll be the first one to acknowledge, like with the Steve Perkins case, if the officers made a mistake and evidence shows they made a mistake and stepped outside their bounds, I'll come on here and I'll do a video and I'll say, look, my assessment of the situation was not accurate at the time that I did it. I'll apologize to everybody. But until then, I have to sit here and think they were doing their job. When a man shot at them, they were basically went into self-defense mode, and they were there to keep the peace because he had already threatened a man with a gun already. And another thing that people don't think about, if you sign a loan as collateral. Like if it's a loan for your truck is collateral. What that means is that it's not really your truck. It's the truck you're driving and you have the rights to if you finish the contract as written correctly. Now, if there's some reason that the contract is not finished correctly, when you sign that contract, you already agreed you can come and get the truck if I somehow default on this, and you don't have to miss a pay. You can you can cancel your insurance, be up to date on all your payments, and be in default on a loan, because the loans require you to have insurance. So there's all kinds of areas that you can be, wrong in. But if they come and do what you agreed that they could do, such as repossess a vehicle, you don't then turn and start breaking the law by threatening a man with a gun. Be a man. Call the NAACP president, Rodney Gordon, and say, Rodney, look, I'm behind on my payments. They're talking about repossessing. Let the community come together. You see what I'm saying? Don't just decide, well, I'm going to use a gun to keep my vehicle. That's not how it goes. And in this case, it has not ended well. Not only just not well for Steve Perkins, his wife, his children, all that stuff, but the whole community currently is hurting and suffering because of this. But when you think about the two cases that Rodney is making it, he's blaming a police officer. The young man could have taken his foot off the gasoline, put it on the brake, pulled over, and avoided wrecking himself by speeding and running from the police. When that first time I showed a video where the garage door opened, the first time when that garage door opened, if Steve Perkins had known that was an illegal repossession going on in progress, he had the liberty to call 911. Hey, I got somebody out here trying to take my vehicle, and it's illegal. It's absolutely illegal. So, you can't base your attitude off what a group of the mayor called a group of people. Sometimes he said the tail is wagging the dog. I mean, you got a small group of people trying to bully the rest of a society. It's not going to work. It just doesn't work that way. So that's how you keep the police. That's how you keep peace with the police. That's how you maintain a good relationship and get along with the police. You don't walk around with a guilty conscience. You don't go around breaking laws and think that, well, instead of going to jail or whatever, I'm just going to fight the police. That just continues. I would say that this mentality has probably accounted for more people going to jail and ruining their lives and perhaps even being shot or whatever than any other thing that's going on. It's the mentality of I'll break the law and I'll fight every way I can to resist the powers that God has put in place to be a terror to me. So anyway, I'm gonna let you go. Hopefully that explains things. I'm sure there's gonna be people that are offended. You guys that are listening to this stuff and you understand what I'm saying, you're gonna see some stupid comments coming in here because there's people that their conscience not only is guilty, but it's been seared. It doesn't. There's no longer a conscience in their mind or where they can go, you know what, I did wrong, and I'm gonna try to do better. That it's gone. That's gone from them. So anyway, I'll let you go. See you.